At my cousin's wedding, they looked at me like I was a failure. They whispered, they laughed, they made their little jokes, never realizing that I was holding $1 million secret in my pocket. By the end of the story, their smug faces would never look at me the same way again. This is the story of the night they mocked me at her wedding, and how I walked out with the power to change everything. The champagne flute trembles in my hand as I watch my cousin Sarah glide down the aisle in her $1,000 dress, her father beaming with pride beside her. The church is packed with relatives I haven't seen in years, all dressed in their finest clothes, whispering about business deals in vacation homes and whose kids got into which prestigious universities. And then there's me, sitting in the back row in my off-the-rack blazer from Target, trying to blend into the mahogany pews like I always do at family gatherings. The same blazer I wore to my college graduation 3 years ago, when nobody from my family showed up because Sarah's engagement party was the same weekend. I should have seen what was coming. The signs were all there during the reception, when Uncle Frank cornered me by the dessert table, his breath heavy with whiskey and condescension. "So, Jenny," he said, loud enough for half the table to hear, "still playing around with that little computer thing of yours? My startup. The one I'd been pouring my life into for the past 18 months. The one that kept me awake until 3 in the morning, coding until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. The one that had consumed every dollar of my savings and forced me to live on ramen noodles and discount coffee. Yeah, I managed, my voice barely audible over the string quartet. It's going well, actually." Aunt Margaret materialized beside us, like a vulture sensing weakness. "Oh, honey," she cooed, patting my arm with her manicured fingers. "When are you going to get a real job? You can't live in Fantasyland forever." The words hit like physical blows. I'd heard variations of this conversation at every family gathering since I graduated, while my cousins landed positions at their father's law firms and investment banks. I was the black sheep who chose technology over tradition, innovation over inheritance. My mother appeared at my shoulder, her smile tight with embarrassment. "Jenny's always been the creative one," she said, her tone suggesting this was more of a character flaw than a strength. "We keep hoping she'll grow out of it." Grow out of it. Like my dreams were some childhood phase. Like wanting to build something meaningful was equivalent to believing in Santa Claus. The conversation continued around me, voices blending into a familiar chorus of disappointment. My father joined the circle, adjusting his tie nervously, as he always did when discussing my career choices. "We offered to get her an interview at Morrison Financial," he said to Uncle Frank, as if I weren't standing right there. "Entry-level position, good benefits, but she insists on this technology nonsense." Technology nonsense. The phrase burned in my chest like acid. These were the same people who couldn't figure out how to update their smartphones, dismissing an entire industry that was reshaping the world around them. Sarah floated over in her wedding dress, radiant and glowing, her new husband trailing behind her like an expensive accessory. The conversation immediately shifted to congratulate the golden couple, and I found myself pushed further to the edges of the circle. "Jenny's still doing that startup thing," Aunt Margaret announced to Sarah, her voice dripping with pity. "Bless her heart." Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Oh, that's nice," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "I'm sure you'll figure something out eventually." Figure something out. Like I was a child playing dress-up, not a software engineer with a computer science degree from a top-tier university. Not someone who'd spent the last year and a half building something revolutionary from scratch. The circle tightened around the bride and groom, and I retreated to my corner table, watching my family celebrate success while treating my ambitions like an embarrassing joke. My cousin David, fresh out of business school and already working at his father's firm, raised his glass in a toast. "To Sarah and Michael," he announced, his voice carrying across the reception hall. "May your marriage be as successful as your careers." Applause rippled through the room. I clapped mechanically, my hands moving without thought, while my mind wandered to the laptop sitting in my apartment, to the lines of code that represented months of sleepless nights, to the product that was so close to launch. I could taste it. Uncle Frank settled into the chair beside me, his expression a mixture of pity and superiority. "You know, Jenny," he said, leaning close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath, "your cousin David just closed his first major deal. 6 figures. Real money. Real money. As opposed to what? Fake money?" I wanted to ask him about his definition of real success, about whether following someone else's path counted as achievement or just inheritance. But I stayed silent, nodding politely while he continued. "Maybe it's time to consider something more stable," he pressed on. "Sarah's husband works in finance too. Very respectable field. I could make some calls." The offer hung in the air like smoke from a dying cigarette. A safety net disguised as an opportunity, a chance to join the family business empire, to become another cog in their well-oiled machine of mediocrity. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I'm committed to my current path." Uncle Frank's expression shifted from pity to annoyance. "Pride goeth before a fall, Jenny. Don't let stubbornness ruin your future." My future. The one they'd mapped out for me without asking, complete with a corner office in someone else's building and a title that meant nothing to me. The safe, predictable future that would slowly suffocate everything I'd ever cared about. The band started playing, and couples drifted onto the dance floor. I watched my parents waltz together, their movements practiced and comfortable. They'd been married for 28 years, built a stable life together, raised 3 children who mostly met their expectations. 2 out of 3 wasn't bad, right? My phone buzzed against my leg, a notification from my development server. My heart skipped as I discreetly checked the message under the table. The beta test results from this morning. The numbers that would determine whether the last 18 months had been brilliant innovation or catastrophic failure. I stared at the screen, reading the metrics twice to make sure I wasn't imagining them. User engagement rates, conversion percentages, retention statistics. Numbers that told a story I'd barely dared to hope for. My hands shook as I scrolled through the data. Every metric was not just good, it was exceptional. Better than my most optimistic projections. The kind of numbers that venture capitalists dreamed about, that tech blogs would write articles about, that could transform a struggling startup into a unicorn overnight. A laugh escaped my throat, half hysteria and half relief. I quickly covered it with a cough, glancing around to make sure nobody had noticed my momentary loss of composure. Across the reception hall, Sarah was cutting her cake, the photographer capturing every perfect moment. The same photographer who documented her engagement party, her bridal shower, her rehearsal dinner. A life carefully curated for maximum social media impact. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus, my co-founder, the only person who truly understood what we'd been building together. His message was just 3 words, but they hit me like lightning. "Holy shit, Jenny." I excused myself from the table and slipped out to the hotel corridor, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The hallway was quieter, decorated with oil paintings of long-dead businessmen who'd probably never questioned the paths their families had chosen for them. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Did you see the numbers?" he asked, without preamble, his voice crackling with excitement through the phone. "I saw them," I whispered, pacing the empty hallway. "Are they real?" "They're real." His voice was steady now, professional. "Jenny, we did it. The algorithm is performing exactly like we hoped. Better, actually." The words washed over me, like warm did it. After 18 months of 16-hour days, after max rain, after a drought, weighing out credit cards and eating cereal for dinner, after every family member treating our work like an elaborate hobby, we'd actually done it. Marcus continued talking, his words tumbling together in excitement. "The user acquisition costs are lower than projected. The retention rates are through the roof. Jenny, we're looking at unicorn-level metrics here. Unicorn, a startup valued at over $1 billion. The holy grail of entrepreneurship. The thing that happened to other people, the lucky ones. The ones who went to Stanford and had trust funds and connections. Not people like me, who grew up in suburban mediocrity and financed their dreams with student loans and stubborn determination." I leaned against the wall, letting the reality sink in. Through the reception hall doors, I could hear my family laughing and celebrating Sarah's perfect wedding, completely unaware that their black sheep was holding the key to something extraordinary. "How long do we have before the next funding round?" I asked. Marcus paused. "That's the thing, Jenny. We might not need another funding round. With these metrics, we could be profitable within 6 months, self-sustaining within a year, self-sustaining, independent, free from the constant worry about rent money and whether I could afford groceries that week, free from the pitying looks and unsolicited career advice from relatives who'd never risked anything in their lives." "I need to get back to the reception," I said, my voice steadier than it had been all evening. "Can we meet tomorrow morning? I want to see everything." "Absolutely." Marcus's grin was audible through the phone. "Jenny, everything changes now. Everything changes now." I hung up and smoothed my discount blazer, checking my reflection in the hallway mirror. Same face, same clothes, same person who'd walked into this wedding reception as the family disappointment. But something fundamental had shifted. The numbers on my phone weren't just statistics. They were vindication, proof that every late night, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt had been worth it. I pushed open the doors and stepped back into the reception, where my family was still celebrating someone else's success, still dismissing dreams they couldn't understand. The conversation at my table had moved on to real estate prices and vacation plans, the safe topics that filled their comfortable lives. Uncle Frank looked up as I approached. "Feel better?" he asked, his tone suggesting he thought I'd been having some kind of breakdown. "Much better," I replied, sliding back into my chair with a smile that felt different than before. Much, much better. The band played on, couples swayed on the dance floor, and my family continued their conversations about conventional success and traditional paths. But I sat there, holding the secret that would change everything, watching them celebrate the ordinary while I carried the extraordinary in my pocket. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The next morning arrives with the kind of clarity that only comes after a sleepless night spent staring at spreadsheets and growth projections. I sit at my kitchen table, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside me, as Marcus walks me through the numbers that seemed too good to be true just 12 hours ago. The beta users aren't just engaging with our platform, they're obsessed with it. Average session time is 43 minutes. 43 minutes. Most social media apps struggle to keep users for 5. Jenny, look at this, Marcus says, his finger tracing across the screen during our video call. The viral coefficient is off the charts. Every user is bringing in an average of 2.3 new users organically. Do you understand what that means? I understand it means we've built something people actually want, something they're willing to tell their friends about without us paying them to do it. The kind of organic growth that marketing executives at Fortune 500 companies spend millions trying to achieve. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Hope you had fun at the wedding last night. Sarah looked beautiful, didn't she? Call me later. We need to talk about your situation. My situation. The same phrase she'd used when I dropped out of my master's program to focus on the startup full-time. The same words that followed me through family dinners and holiday gatherings like a scarlet letter. Marcus pulls up another dashboard. The revenue projections based on our current growth rate make my breath catch in my throat. 6 figures within 3 months. 7 figures within 8. Numbers that transform everything I thought I knew about what was possible. We need to talk about scaling, he says. His business school training, kicking in. Infrastructure, hiring, office space. We're going to need a real team. A real team. Real office space. Real revenue. The words taste foreign in my mouth after so many months of operating out of coffee shops in my cramped apartment. My laptop chimes with an email notification. The sender makes my stomach drop. Uncle Frank. The subject line reads, "Following up on our conversation." I click it open, already knowing what I'll find. A forwarded job posting for an entry-level position at Morrison Financial. Full benefits package, competitive salary, room for growth within the family network. The safe choice, wrapped in corporate letterhead and false concern. Jenny, I hope you'll consider this opportunity seriously. It's time to put aside childish pursuits and focus on building a real career. Your family is worried about your future. Childish pursuits. I screenshot the email and send it to Marcus without comment. His response comes back immediately. A string of laughing emojis followed by, "Your uncle's going to eat his words." The irony isn't lost on me. While Uncle Frank was forwarding job postings for positions that might pay $50,000 a year after 5 years of climbing someone else's ladder, I was sitting on metrics that suggested our little computer thing could be worth more than his entire firm within 18 months. But the doubt creeps in anyway. It always does. The voice that sounds suspiciously like every family gathering, every dismissive comment, every suggestion that I should be more realistic about my expectations. What if the numbers are a fluke? What if we can't sustain this growth? What if I'm deluding myself the same way my family thinks I've been deluding myself for the past 2 years? Marcus seems to sense my spiraling thoughts through the screen. "Jenny," he says, his voice cutting through my mental noise. "I've run the projections 12 different ways. I've stress-tested the algorithms. I've verified the user data 3 times. This isn't beginner's luck or a statistical anomaly. We built something extraordinary. Extraordinary." The word hangs in the digital space between us, heavy with possibility and terror in equal measure. My doorbell rings, startling me out of my analysis paralysis. Through the peephole, I see my mother standing on my doorstep, her expression a familiar mixture of concern and disappointment. "I'll call you back," I tell Marcus, closing the laptop before opening the door. Mom steps inside without invitation, her eyes immediately scanning my apartment with the practiced judgment of someone cataloging evidence of poor life choices. The futon that doubles as my office chair, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, the ramen noodle containers in the recycling bin. "We need to have a serious conversation," she says, settling onto my couch like she's preparing for an intervention. "Your father and I are worried about you. Worried about me. Not proud of my persistence or curious about my progress. Worried like I'm a problem that needs solving rather than a person pursuing her dreams." "Jenny, you're 25 years old," she continues, her voice taking on the tone she used when I was 7 and refusing to clean my room. "You can't live like this forever. Look at Sarah. Look at your cousins. They have real jobs, real security, real lives. Real lives." As if my life, with its uncertainty and passion and late-night breakthroughs, somehow doesn't qualify as genuine existence. "Sarah's husband just got promoted to senior associate," she presses on. "They're looking at houses in Westchester. When are you going to start thinking about your future seriously?" "I am thinking about my future," I say, my laptop seeming to pulse with hidden energy from across the room. "More seriously than you realize. But Mom's already moved on to her prepared talking points. Uncle Frank sent you that job posting. The benefits package alone is worth more than whatever you're making now with that website thing. That website thing. The platform that had kept me awake for 72 hours straight last week, troubleshooting a server issue that could have crashed everything we'd built. The application that was currently processing thousands of user interactions per minute, generating data that would make tech journalists salivate." "Mom," I try to interrupt, but she's building momentum like a freight train on a downhill track. "Your father ran into Jim Morrison at the golf club last weekend. He specifically asked about you. Said there might be room in their marketing department if you're willing to start at the bottom and work your way up properly." Start at the bottom. Work my way up properly. Follow the prescribed path that leads to corner offices and retirement plans, and the kind of respectability that comes with someone else's name on your business cards. I think about the metrics still glowing on my closed laptop screen, about the user testimonials flooding our support inbox, about the venture capital firms that would probably start calling within weeks if our growth trajectory continued. The conversation continues around me, Mom's voice fading into background noise as my mind wanders to the notification I'd received an hour earlier. A message from someone whose username I didn't recognize, thanking us for building something that had changed their small business completely. That's what we were creating. Not just code or algorithms or user engagement statistics, but actual impact. Real change in real people's lives. The kind of meaning that doesn't fit neatly into job descriptions or family expectations. Mom finally pauses for breath, and I seize the opportunity. "What if I told you things were going better than you think?" I ask carefully. Her expression shifts to the patient smile she reserves for my more outlandish statements. "Honey, I know you believe in what you're doing, but belief doesn't pay rent or build retirement savings. What if it did?" The question slips out before I can stop it. She reaches across and pats my hand, the gesture somehow managing to be both comforting and condescending simultaneously. "Jenny, we just want what's best for you. Security, stability, a life you can count on. Security and stability, the twin gods of middle-class aspiration, the safe harbor that had sheltered my parents' generation through decades of predictable prosperity. But what if there was something better than security? What if there was significance?" My phone buzzes against the coffee table. Marcus again, probably with more data, more projections, more evidence that everything was about to change in ways my family couldn't even imagine. I let it ring. The silence stretches between us as Mom's hand rests on mine, Her wedding ring, catching the afternoon light streaming through my apartment window. The same ring she's worn for 28 years, symbol of the safe choices that built her comfortable life. I should tell her. Right here, right now, I should open my laptop and show her the numbers that prove everything she believes about my future is wrong. But something holds me back. An instinct I can't quite name. Maybe it's the memory of every conversation we've had about my career over the past 3 years. The way her eyes glaze over when I try to explain what we're building. The polite nod she gives before changing the subject to Sarah's engagement photos or David's latest promotion. Or maybe it's something deeper. The realization that this moment, this secret I'm carrying, might be the last time I'm the family disappointment instead of the family disruptor. Mom stands up, smoothing her skirt with the practiced efficiency of someone who's mastered the art of managing other people's problems. I should get going, she says, glancing around my apartment one more time. Promise me you'll think about that Morrison financial position. Just promise me that. I promise I'll think about it, I say, which is technically true. I'll think about how Uncle Frank's expression will change when he realizes the niece he was trying to rescue just became more successful than he'll ever be. After she leaves, I call Marcus back. The excitement in his voice hasn't dimmed during our interruption. Jenny, you're not going to believe what just happened, he says, before I can even say hello. Try me, I reply, settling back into my desk chair with renewed focus. TechCrunch wants to interview us. Apparently, someone leaked our beta metrics to a journalist, and now they're calling us the next big thing in enterprise automation. TechCrunch, the publication that launches startup careers and destroys them with equal efficiency. The same magazine I'd been reading religiously since college, studying the success stories of entrepreneurs who seemed impossibly sophisticated and well-connected compared to where I started. When? I ask, my throat suddenly dry. Tomorrow afternoon. Phone interview first. But if it goes well, they want to fly us out to San Francisco for a feature piece. San Francisco, the promised land of venture capital and unicorn valuations and 20-something CEOs who grace magazine covers. A world that seemed as distant from my Target blazer and ramen noodle diet as Mars. Marcus continues talking, but I find myself staring out my apartment window at the suburban street where I grew up. The same neighborhood where my parents still live, where success is measured in steady paychecks and home equity, and children who follow predictable paths to predictable destinations. Tomorrow, everything could change, not just for me, but for how my family sees me, how I see myself. The thought terrifies me more than I want to admit. We spend the next 4 hours preparing for the interview, crafting our origin story into something that sounds intentional rather than desperate. Marcus handles the technical explanations while I focus on the human impact. The problems we're solving for real businesses run by real people. By evening, we've rehearsed our pitch until it flows like a well-choreographed dance. But as I close my laptop and prepare for another sleepless night, my phone rings with a familiar number. Sarah's voice bubbles through the speaker, still high on wedding bliss and champagne. Afterglow. Jenny, she chirps, I just wanted to thank you again for coming yesterday. It meant so much to have the whole family there. Of course, I reply, though we both know I spent most of the reception hiding in corners. Michael and I were just talking about our honeymoon plans, she continues, her voice carrying that particular tone people use when they're about to offer unwanted advice. We think you should really consider that job Uncle Frank mentioned. Michael has connections at Morrison Financial, and he'd be happy to put in a good word. That's very generous, I say carefully, watching the cursor blink on my laptop screen, where our interview notes are still open. You know, Jenny, Sarah's tone shifts slightly, becoming more serious. We're all just worried about you. Living like this, struggling financially, chasing something that might not work out, it's not sustainable. Sustainable. The word echoes in my mind as I think about our user retention rates, our revenue projections, the sustainability of building something people actually want versus accepting something they're willing to offer. I appreciate the concern, I tell her, but I'm actually doing better than it might appear. Are you, though? The question hangs in the air like a challenge, because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're treading water while everyone else is swimming to shore. Everyone else. My cousins with their inherited positions and predetermined paths. The family members who've never risked anything more dangerous than a mutual fund investment or a mortgage they could comfortably afford. Sarah, what if I told you something big was about to happen? Something that might change how everyone thinks about what I've been doing. She laughs, the sound light, but somehow cutting. Oh, honey, you've been saying that for 2 years now. Remember when you thought that investor was going to fund your idea? Or when you were sure that partnership was going to work out? She's right. I've been the boy who cried wolf, sharing optimistic updates that never materialized into the success I kept promising was just around the corner. Every family gathering brought new stories of almost breakthroughs and near misses that sounded increasingly hollow as months passed. This is different, I say, but even I can hear how familiar those words sound. I'm sure it feels different, Sarah replies gently. But Jenny, at some point, you have to be realistic about what's possible. Not everyone can be Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs. Most of us just need to find good jobs and build normal lives. Normal lives. The phrase settles in my chest like a stone. Sarah's right, of course. Most startups fail. Most entrepreneurs never achieve the success they dream about. Most people who chase extraordinary outcomes end up with ordinary disappointments. But what if this time really is different? Listen, I should go, Sarah says. Michael's making dinner, and we want to finalize our honeymoon reservations. But Jenny, just promise me you'll think seriously about your options. We all love you, and we want to see you succeed. But success looks different than what you might think it looks like. After we hang up, I sit in my apartment as darkness falls outside my windows. My laptop glows with the promise of tomorrow's interview, but Sarah's words echo in my mind like a warning. What if they're right? What if I'm deluding myself the same way every failed entrepreneur deludes themselves right up until the moment their savings run out and reality crashes down around them? I open my phone and scroll through the beta user feedback that's been flooding our support channels. Business owners talking about how our platform saved them hours of manual work. Managers describing how our automation features help them focus on strategy instead of busy work. Real people seeing real value in something we built from nothing. This isn't delusion. This is validation. But doubt is a persistent companion, especially at 3 a.m. when the city sleeps and you're alone with your thoughts in the weight of every family conversation that's ever made you question your choices. I make coffee and return to my laptop, diving back into our metrics and projections. The numbers haven't changed. If anything, they've gotten better as more beta users discover our platform and start integrating it into their daily workflows. By sunrise, I've rehearsed our interview talking points so many times I could recite them in my sleep. Marcus calls at 7, his voice tight with nervous energy. Ready for this? He asks. I look around my apartment one more time, the futon, The stack of bills, the ramen containers, the physical evidence of every sacrifice I've made to get to this moment. Ready, I tell him, and for the first time in months, I actually mean it. The TechCrunch interview happens at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon that feels like it lasts several lifetimes. The journalist, Rebecca Chen, asks probing questions about our technology, our market positioning, our plans for scaling. Marcus handles the technical details, while I focus on the story, the problems we're solving, and the impact we're creating. 45 minutes later, we hang up and stare at each other through our respective screens. How do you think it went? Marcus asks. Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with a text from Rebecca. Great conversation. Feature piece goes live Thursday morning. Prepare for some attention. Some attention. In the startup world, that phrase carries weight I'm only beginning to understand. Thursday morning hits like a lightning strike. I wake up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. My phone has been buzzing nonstop since 5 a.m., but nothing prepared me for opening TechCrunch and seeing our company name in a headline that stretches across my laptop screen in bold letters. The feature piece is everything we could have hoped for and more. Rebecca Chen didn't just write an article. She crafted a narrative that transforms our scrappy startup into the next big disruption in enterprise automation. The metrics we shared are presented alongside industry analysis that makes our growth trajectory look inevitable rather than miraculous. But it's the quote that stops my breath entirely. Rebecca wrote, "In a market dominated by legacy solutions and incremental improvements, Edwards and her co-founder have built something that feels genuinely revolutionary. Their platform isn't just solving problems, it's reimagining how small businesses think about productivity entirely. Revolutionary. The word pulses on my screen like a heartbeat. My phone rings immediately. Marcus, his voice crackling with excitement and disbelief. Jenny, are you seeing this? The article's been shared 3,000 times in 2 hours. Our website crashed from traffic. We're trending on Twitter. Trending on Twitter. 6 months ago, I couldn't afford new shoes. Now strangers on the internet are discussing our company strategy and debating our market potential in real time. The calls start immediately. Venture capital firms I've only read about in business magazines. Tech reporters wanting follow-up interviews. Business development managers from Fortune 500 companies interested in partnerships. My inbox fills with messages faster than I can read them. At noon, my mother calls. Her voice carries a confusion I've never heard before. Like she's speaking a foreign language she doesn't quite understand. Jenny, Mrs. Peterson from next door, just called. She saw an article about you online. Something about your computer company being worth millions. I step onto my apartment balcony, needing air and space to process this conversation. Mom, remember how you've been worried about my situation? Well, my situation just changed dramatically. The silence stretches long enough that I check to make sure the call hasn't dropped. When she speaks again, her voice is smaller, uncertain. What does this mean exactly? How do I explain that the daughter she's been trying to rescue just became more successful than anyone in our family has ever been? That the website thing she dismissed is now being valued by investors at numbers that would buy Uncle Frank's entire firm twice over? It means I won't be needing that Morrison Financial interview, I say gently. It means everything we've been building is working better than we ever imagined. Another pause. Then, in a whisper, how much better? Before I can answer, my phone buzzes with an incoming call from a Silicon Valley area code. Mom, I need to take this. Can we talk tonight? I promise. I'll explain everything. The call is from Andreessen Horowitz. one of the most prestigious venture capital firms in the world. The partner on the line has a voice that sounds like money and confidence wrapped in a California accent. Ms. Edwards, we've been tracking your metrics since the TechCrunch piece went live. We'd like to discuss a potential Series A funding round. Are you available to fly out to Palo Alto tomorrow? Tomorrow, 24 hours from now, I could be sitting in the same conference rooms where Facebook and Twitter and dozens of other unicorns secured their early funding. The same offices where dreams become valuations and valuations become empires. I accept the meeting, then immediately call Marcus to share the news. His response is a string of words I can't repeat in polite company, followed by, "Jenny, do you realize what this means? A 16Z doesn't take meetings unless they're serious about writing checks with lots of zeros." The afternoon becomes a blur of phone calls and calendar invites and hastily scheduled video conferences. Every conversation feels surreal, like I'm playing a role in someone else's life. Investors throwing around terms like market penetration and scalability projections and exit strategies, discussing our little startup like it's already conquered the world. By evening, I've fielded 17 investor calls, scheduled 6 meetings for the following week, and received 3 acquisition offers from companies whose names I recognize from their Super Bowl commercials. The numbers being discussed make my head spin and my hands shake. My phone rings again. This time it's Uncle Frank. The phone call with Uncle Frank changes everything. His voice carries a tone I've never heard before, stripped of its usual condescension and replaced with something that sounds almost like respect. "Jenny," he says carefully, "I saw the article in TechCrunch. Your mother sent me the link. I wait for the lecture about getting too big for my britches, the warning about pride coming before a fall. Instead, he clears his throat awkwardly. I owe you an apology. We all do. We didn't understand what you were building." The words hang between us, like a bridge neither of us expected to cross. Uncle Frank, who spent decades dismissing my dreams as childish fantasies, is suddenly speaking to me like an equal, like someone whose opinion matters. I think about that night at Sarah's wedding, sitting in my Target blazer, while everyone around me celebrated conventional success. The family disappointment who carried a secret worth millions in her pocket. The black sheep who'd just proven that sometimes the flock is wrong about which direction leads to greener pastures. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't proving everyone wrong. It's proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply building something so extraordinary that mockery transforms into admiration, dismissal becomes respect, and the family that never believed in you suddenly can't stop talking about your success. 3 years later, when Forbes puts me on their 30 under 30 list and our company reaches unicorn status, I'll think back to that wedding reception where it all began, to the moment I chose to bet on myself when nobody else would. Because that's what entrepreneurship really is, having the audacity to believe your vision matters more than their doubts. They had laughed at me, but in the end, I was the one holding the power. If you thought this story was satisfying, just wait until you hear what happened when they tried to take everything from me again. That's where the real revenge begins.